Investors, in my view, matter a lot in this because you make short-term versus long-term trade-offs.
What percent of investors in Silicon Valley do you think are good long-term company builders?
I get in a lot of trouble for saying this.
Or among friends, it's
I think
okay.
90% of investors add no value. In my assessment, 70% of investors add negative value to a company. That means they're advising a company. And this is part of team building too for entrepreneurs. They're advising a company when they haven't earned the right to advise an entrepreneur. So some of the junior people here, when they ask me, hey, at this other firm, young people are going on boards, can I be on a board? I say, you haven't earned the right to advise an entrepreneur, so it's unfair to the entrepreneur. Yeah. Just because you got an MBA and joined a venture firm doesn't mean you're qualified to advise an entrepreneur. The biggest piece of it, not the only way, is have you built a large company? Have you gone through how hard it is, how uncertain it is, how traumatic it is to go through? I mean, just this morning, I was talking to somebody about how many times we almost worried about making payroll at Sun.
How many
or
times?
Going bankrupt. Plenty of times.
Like more than 2?
Yeah. And there was a 3-month period where we almost went bankrupt because we had a hardware problem. Monitors we were buying from Philips were breaking every 30 days. I think there was probably a month or two when the earliest I went home was at 3 a.m. and the latest I was back in the office was 7 a.m. Unless you felt that gut-wrenching decision, you can't advise an entrepreneur. I hate board members who sit in a board meeting and say, oh, can you improve quality? And then 5 minutes later, can you ship faster? And 5 minutes later, spend less money. And they've never gone through really hard trade-offs and how uncertain it is. If you add more people and increase your burn rate, are you going to improve or hurt your chances of getting something out? These are very uncertain, very hard calls. The biggest thing an entrepreneur deals with is which risk to take when. When you take a financial risk of running lean, when you take a engineer marketing risk of a feature poor product, which risk do you want to take? And it's like whack-a-mole. And ambiguity is so hard to deal with, but it's the essence. And frankly, it's one of the areas where entrepreneurs, when they don't think about what they actually need, pick the wrong people. So if somebody's never dealt with this decision-making under ambiguity and they're in a big company, they're not qualified to help you.
One of the things I hate about board members is when you're doing that, deciding which risk you want in this stressful environment, the thing you most want as an entrepreneur is a board that you feel is calming you down, is supporting you, is not adding the stress. And most board members, while you're doing that, just like tell you, oh, you're going to die. The thing I hate the most is when an old board member of mine used to send me like press clippings of competitors all the time to like make a point. And you really just want someone who's like, you got to take a hard risk here. It's a tough decision.
These things are the things you're not qualified to advise an entrepreneur on if you haven't been through them. There is a time when panic is the appropriate response in a company.
It does happen.
Yeah.
One thing that I think I've noticed entrepreneurs that are working on hard, ambitious companies really struggle with is figuring out who to trust for what advice. Yeah. So how do you think about that?
So my big advice, and the first piece of advice I gave Joe Kraus when he was starting Excite was, the single hardest decision you'll make is whose advice to trust on what topic.